So why do we meditate? Why are people drawn to meditation? What's it about? Meditation across most traditions is about revealing the self, your higher self. It's about being more. And each tradition is going to have its particular tools to achieve this end. Not all traditions necessarily are going to say that it's about revealing the self to course. So, for example, some traditions may use mantras or concentration on the breath. And the aim of that, or the reason to do that, is to start moving behind your ordinary mental consciousness. The self, or these aspects of your higher self, lie behind the ordinary mind. So your work is to start to move behind the ordinary mind. Now Samuel talks about awakening the third eye. So what is the third eye and why is it so important? So the third eye, probably most people have heard of it, goes across many, many traditions. It's written about by Steiner, it's in the Indian tradition, it's even mentioned in the Bible. The Indian had a beautiful analogy of the coconut with two eyes that are blind, and the third eye sees within. It's the nectar within. So it's a spiritual organ, if you like. And this organ is something through which the self can reveal. So there's like this symbiotic relationship that you start to awaken this organ, and it facilitates experiences of the self, which in turn nourishes this spiritual organ of perception. So just moving on a bit, like why would we, what's that going to be like? What's the experience? The way Samuel approaches is very much experience over theory. His techniques are about awakening the structure and then what happens from there. So it's a very curiosity-driven approach, if you like. And the emphasis is on doing the practice rather than trying to be somebody, like trying to be an enlightened person or a clairvoyant person. It's about doing the practices and seeing what's revealed. So I thought I'd give you a couple of my own experiences. When I attended an Awakening the Third Eye workshop, which is based on Samuel's book, we did practices. So the techniques are about placing awareness on this part of your subtle anatomy, the spiritual organ, which across all traditions lies, the third eye lies between the eyebrows approximately. So when I went to the Awakening the Third Eye workshop, which was many years ago, I came from a fairly sceptical background. I hadn't had any strong spiritual experiences. I was philosophically interested in the idea of a higher self. I'd studied ancient Indian history, and there's a lot of the embedded in the society in that. But I hadn't had any experience. So we did a very simple practice where after working over the weekend, people are asked to either become aware of the third eye and then take their awareness further in either the heart or the belly. So there are also organs of perception, if you like. There's other spiritual organs in these areas, roughly equated to chakras, which I think many of you have heard about. So we had a lovely exercise where two lines were lined up, and one line were people concentrating on being aware in their heart, and in the other line people were concentrating on being in their belly through the third eye. And then we took it in turns of walking down these lines, and my experience was really, really tangible. So as I walked down the first line, there was like a warmth and a vibration in this area of my body, and also in my belly when I walked down the other line. So that's a kind of simple experience. And then I thought I'd talk a little bit about, I started doing the practices on the kind of direction or these flashes of intuition that start to happen as you move behind the ordinary mental consciousness or the ordinary mind. So I was nursing at the time, and I was pretty not knowing what I wanted to do. And I started, as I was doing my meditation, I got a clear insight that I wanted to work in a particular area in medicine. And so I did. And I really engaged in that area. And I became a specialist and I moved into management. So there was a clear trajectory of some clarity coming into my life. So one of the reasons I've given you those couple of examples is that I want to kind of showcase that part of what, when you start doing these practices, you break through mechanicity. And that's one of the key things that happens as basically you start to get in touch with this higher part of yourself. This higher part, spontaneous, creativity. Sage has written about massive states of cognition that we simply cannot hold in our ordinary minds. So there's very varying degrees of that. So, that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this sense of, as you do your meditation practice, when you do your normal activities in the day, you start to become very present. You're not just blindly walking to work, doing whatever your job is. There's a sense that you start to take notice of your environment. There's a sense that your environment and you interact in a different way. So that's one thing. The other aspect that Samuel really emphasises is vision. So there's these attributes that start to come through as you suppress your ordinary mental consciousness. And you start to think differently, have different perception. And this is the vision of the self. So that's an important aspect that is emphasised. And also that you don't try and become a more compassionate person or a more empathetic person or a clearer person or a cleverer person. By doing the practices, these qualities inherently start to come through in your life, depending on how much you push your practice. So we don't, his approach and my approach now, because I've worked very closely with Samuel on workshops myself, is it's patient work. You build up this organ. There's no quick fixes, but you get these little glimpses, and that gives you encouragement to keep going. So you put your will into the practices, not necessarily into being a type of person, because that's all driven through your ordinary mental consciousness. Another quality that's intrinsic to the self, if you like, or starts to come through, is a quality of warmth. And I'll give you an example of that also from my nursing. When I was nursing, I finished nursing a number of years ago and decided to pursue full-time practices and run workshops. So when I was nursing, I was in an area where people were diagnosed with cardiac disease, so they were confronted with their mortality. And so they'd be in quite a state of shock, often when we were looking after them post-operatively. And it's not as though there was no empathy there to start with, but as I started using my third eye practice, and I would position myself, if you like, in that area of perception, then I'd get this great insight into the patient, and this level of warmth could pass between me and a client, a patient. It was often non-verbal. So in that sort of deep empathy, that deep compassion, that you can affect some sort of change. And it's quite spontaneous. You don't have to try. You don't have to think, I've got to be nice to this person because they've had some terrible news. Which leads me on to another aspect of, as you start to work, suppressing or moving away from your ordinary mental consciousness, of being planted in yourself, from which you can take action. And I just want to, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics is the way that the meditation is taught. Is there's two aspects of it. There's your meditation that you learn to do. The Awakening Third Eye is very much like a manual, and it'll take you through gradually building up to you've got a 30-minute meditation. So that's what you do on your own. In the morning, hopefully, the first thing you do, and it puts you on a certain trajectory. And then the second aspect of meditation is what we call dynamic awareness. And because you've done a morning meditation, you're well positioned to then reference, if you like, your third eye in various situations. You might forget about it, but then you can reference back to it and see what happens. So that can roughly equate to mindfulness. I haven't done or learnt the mindfulness technique, but I would say there's something along those lines about being present in your daily activities that would equate with mindfulness. And then lastly, just that these organs of spiritual perception, of which the third eye is a foundational organ, if you like, are inherent. They're already there. They're not as though you're given them or transmitted them. It's like you reveal them through the practices. So it's very much see for yourself, know for yourself, and that anyone with practice can start to develop this sense of spiritual vision. All right, and if anyone would like to ask any questions.
Sorry, I missed part of the talk, I'm afraid, but does Samuel Sagan still follow like the Indian system of the chakras, let's say, and do you rise through the chakras, as it were?
He spent many, many years in India, and he knows the system of the chakras extremely well.
Right.
So there are various techniques. He doesn't tend to call them chakras because there's been so much written about them that it just creates a mental picture of them. So we call them energy centers. So that we use basically the heart, the belly, and then below around the perineum and above the head. So what he did when he developed the school was to make bridges between different traditions. That was one of his aims. So he's heavily versed in the Indian tradition. He's learnt Sanskrit. Then he studied quite intensely in the Western esoteric tradition.
So that it's suitable for Western practitioners.
Exactly. And so that there's quite a lot of Steiner, like he's incorporated the body of subtle bodies from Steiner, the fourfold model as well. And so there's this crossover. And the idea is that see for yourself, know for yourself. So you use, the thing is to get an experience, that's the most important thing. And then just kind of get the theory, but get the experience first.
Well, and have you had any experiences where people who do experience Kundalini awakening are perhaps unsettled or ungrounded, or what do you do in those sorts of situations?
We have a fairly systematic approach to working with energies in the lower chakras, if you like.
Because I've heard it can be quite dangerous, as it were.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a lot of fear associated
There's
with
a lot. There was one book written, I think, in the 1950s that sort of started this whole trend of that. But the way it's approached is that it's a very systematic approach, and so people have had awakenings, but they're so grounded in the third eye that they're used to having experiences.
So it's quite a safe experience. And
so they've got a context, they've had experiences before, they know what to do with the energy as it rises.
Great.
So we haven't had any sort of explosions with that particular thing that people have lost their bearings.
Great, good. So it's good stuff to recommend to our customers,
Yes.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions maybe, or queries?
I'm just feeling, I just sort of walked in the shop, I didn't know why I came in, so I just come. And I'm just feeling really happy to listen to you. And my background is Osho.
Oh yes.
Which, I mean, I know he was an Indian, but he was nothing, he encompassed
absolutely
the whole,
he's a brilliant
and
man.
every single word you said just resonated so beautifully. It was just,
That's very interesting, because whenever we run workshops in Osho places, of which there's still a few left, the energy's amazing. It's very welcoming. So it's
it just, it's like all is one, and any attempt to deny that is, it is just one universe. I just feel that's just, it's just lovely.
Great,
Have I missed anything, guys?
What would you say like the key techniques for developing third eye are?
The basic technique, the first technique that you're taught is what we call throat friction, which is like a slight contraction of the throat and to actually stimulate this energy center. And that's your very first one. And then you take your awareness here to the third eye. And then we use a system of qualities, like first of all just seeing if you can experience vibration, like just a tingling, and then light, and then a space, like a sense of being in a different state of consciousness. So, excuse me, the practices are you're taken through it very systematically in the book, and also in the workshops. We use music to help people see if they can get some experiences. Probably the first experience I got was the sense of there's something going blah, 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 there, and it's very, very,
Like
it was
tingling.
more tangible. Yeah.
Like a tingling or
Exactly.
a pins and needles sensation or something.
Exactly. Pins and needles.
How do you move your consciousness into that?
Well, it's more like you mean the third eye?
Yeah.
Well, you simply just start with awareness. So you simply put your awareness here, and then with your throat friction. That's all you do. And you do that for throat friction, sense of awareness here. See if there's any tingling vibration. Do that for 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's a little difficult to just talk about, but that's a basic technique. And then you spend 5 minutes with a sense of vibration, keeping the throat friction, and then see if the vibration becomes light, because we're moving from gross physical senses to subtle inner senses. So vibration is the most gross quality, if you like. And then you move into the subtle, you may get a sense of light. That's very individual. It's another thing that it is very individual. So every person's may have a slightly different experience.
So is that like humming or Tibetan throat singing, or how does the vibration sound?
This, like Darth Vader,
Okay.
actually. That's what we teach in so it's just and there's actually, if you go on the website, there's a little audio something doing through it, actually.
Great. Anyone else? So if anyone wanted to attend your workshops or wanted to find out more about the practice, or what books to read or what have you, how would they do that?
They can go to the Clairvision website, www.clairvision.org. Watkins Bookshop sells the Awaken the Third Eye book in England. We're really happy about that. Otherwise, you have to order it from from America. Though Karen Kingston, who's a great space clearer, works with space, she also stocks it. So if you go onto the website, there's all the workshops are listed there, and my workshops are listed there.
Yeah.
We've got one on May 17th and 18th at Violet Hill.
Great.
Interested.
Okay. Well, thank you for talking tonight, and we wish you every success.
Thank you
as
for the
well.
opportunity.
No bother at all. So maybe if you just thank Jane for her talk.